Mate.
What? Who made this stupid game?
Good question. To understand chess, we first have to travel back in time, deep to ancient India. The earliest known ancestor of chess is Chataranga, a board game from the Gupta Empire around the 6th century AD. The word means 4 divisions of an army, referring to the elephants, chariots, cavalry, and infantry, each represented by a distinct piece on the board. But this just kinda looks like chess with elephants instead of bishops or something? Okay, well, where did this come from then? For that, we're gonna have to jump back even further to the Indus Valley civilization. Discoveries of handcrafted ivory pieces and boards similar to those of chess had been discovered at the Harappa and Lothal sites, which proves that the Indus Valley civilization had already developed board games with grids and race-like mechanics some 5,000 years ago. These weren't chess, but they reflected the same spirit, a symbolic representation of war, hierarchy, and conflict. Jumping forward about 2,000 years from this era, we find the next earliest ancestor of chess, Ashtapada, which according to records in India has been played as early as 200 years BC. Ashtapada is an early Indian board game that laid the groundwork for strategic play. It used a dice-based movement system with cowrie shells, where movement depended on how many mouths faced up after the shells were thrown. Players raced around an 8x8 grid, the same board size that chess would later inherit, moving counterclockwise along the outer edge before spiraling inward, a race to the center. Pieces could enter from the entry point, and each time a piece fell on another piece, that piece was taken out of the game and had to be re-entered again. So before armies and kings came on the board, India was already experimenting with grids, luck, and movement, concepts that would later shape into strategy, formation, and war simulation. These rather innocent versions of board games would in just 800 years form into the closest ancestor of modern chess. Fast forward to around the 6th century AD in the Gupta Empire of India. Here we have multiple recorded instances of Chaturanga, with entries as interesting and one in the diary of the religious teacher Buddha, advising his followers against playing it because it was, quote, a cause of negligence. Its board setup and philosophy were inspired by the ancient military formation Akshohini, where entire armies were arranged in mathematically precise formations. The rules of Chaturanga are as follows. It's played on an 8x8 board. We have the king, who moves 1 square in each direction, the minister, which is the predecessor to the modern-day queen, which can move 1 square diagonally in each direction. We have the rook, which moves as in modern-day chess, horizontal and vertical. We have the knight, also moving in the same way as today's knight. Then we have the elephant, or Gaia. This piece has some uncertainty tied to it. No one actually knows the exact move it made, but historians speculate that it likely jumped 2 squares diagonally, leaping over one and landing on the other. We have the pawns, who move 1 square forward with no initial double move. The objective is to checkmate the opponent's king, or win through a bear king, meaning that if you manage to leave your opponent with just a king on the board, you instantly win the game, except if your opponent captures your last piece on their move, thereby bearing your king and drawing the game. This was the first game where strategy overtook chance. Dice were gone, and every move mattered. From India, Chaturanga traveled westward along the Silk Road to Persia, where it evolved into Shatranj in the 7th century. Persians refined the rules and transformed the game into an intellectual pursuit across the Middle East. The rules of Shatranj were as follows. The board and setup were similar to modern-day chess. The bishop could leap 2 squares diagonally, jumping over 1 piece. The pawn moves as in Chaturanga, but promotes only to a furs upon reaching the 8th rank. In this version, stalemate was a win for the person delivering the stalemate, not a draw. Shatranj introduced check, making it illegal to move your king into danger and forcing you to move it if it's in danger, a key rule that defines chess today. Shatranj was a game of calculated logic, played in royal courts and coffee houses from Persia to Baghdad. By 1000 CE, Shatranj had reached Europe through Arab Spain and Italy. Between 1200 and 1700, a series of major rule changes transformed it into what we know today as modern chess. The pawns gained the option to move 2 squares on their first move. castling was introduced as well. Perhaps the most notable change was the abilities of the queen. It became the most powerful piece on the board, moving any number of squares in all directions, a far cry from its previous weaker version. By the late 15th century, the game's new speed and dynamism made it wildly popular. Masters like Ruy Lopez, Lucena, Pedro Damiano, and Guacho Greco began formalizing opening theory, the beginnings of professional chess thought. The 18th and 19th century saw the romantic era of chess, where brilliance and beauty mattered more than sound strategy. Players favored tactical fireworks over safety, and declining a gambit was considered unsportsmanlike. Games like Anderson's Immortal Game and the Opera Game by Paul Morphy defined this period. Wild attacks, sacrifices, and dazzling checkmates. It was chess as an art. By the mid-19th century, the rules were standardized. White moves first became universal. Stalemate became a draw. En passant was formalized. Chess continued to spread in intellectual circles, with puzzle columns in newspapers, chess books, and international tournaments like the first one in London in 1851, won by Adolf Anderssen. In 1886, the first official World Chess Championship was held, and Wilhelm Steinitz became the first world champion. He introduced a new philosophy: chess is a science, not chaos. Steinitz emphasized structure, planning, and positional understanding, a direct rejection of the Romantic style of chess. He was succeeded by Emanuel Lasker, who held the title for 27 years. He was the longest and most dominating world champion in chess history. This was followed by the hyper-modern revolution, with thinkers like Redi, Nimzowitsch, and Tartakower, who challenged classical principles and promoted new ideas like fianchetto structures and dynamic imbalances. After World War II, the Soviet Union dominated the chess world. Chess became a symbol of intellectual and ideological supremacy. Legends like Botvinnik, Smyslov, Tal, Petrosian, Spassky, and Karpov emerged, all Soviet champions, each representing a different chess philosophy. In 1972, the American prodigy Bobby Fischer broke the Soviet dominance, defeating Boris Spassky in the match of the century. It was not just a chess match, it was Cold War theater. At the time, the Soviets and the Americans were engaged in a fierce battle over intellectual superiority, or at least the appearance of such. Fischer's victory broke the Soviet Union's dominance on chess supremacy and skyrocketed the game to worldwide popularity. In 1997, the chess computer Deep Blue defeated Garry Kasparov, marking the end of human superiority over computers. From that point onward, engines began shaping opening theory, analysis, and training. Chess entered the digital era. Engines, databases, and eventually online play revolutionized how humans interacted with the game. During the COVID-19 pandemic, chess experienced an unprecedented global boom. Online platforms like Chess.com and Lichess, combined with the release of The Queen's Gambit on Netflix, brought millions of new players to the game. Streamers, tournaments, and AI-assisted learning reshaped the culture of chess, making it more accessible and entertaining than ever before.